Hello and welcome. You're watching India Global. I'm Arjun Samar Mahindran, and here are the headlines this Wednesday. US government shutdown begins after Senate fails to pass a funding bill amid partisan deadlock. Getting UK permanent residency becomes more tedious. Permanent residency wait for foreign workers doubled to 10 years. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand meets External Affairs Minister Jaishankar in New York, set to visit New Delhi on October 13th and 14th. Awami League holds protests in Geneva against Yunus government in Bangladesh, accuses interim leader of fueling extremism. And BCCI calls Mohsin Naqvi's bluff. Viewers, first trophy chori, now conditions. BCCI makes it clear it's our trophy and we'll take it on our terms. Well, the US has officially entered another federal shutdown just a few hours ago, viewers. While it may sound like political drama in Washington, but for millions of Americans together, it hits much closer to home. It's much more than headlines for millions of Americans. Now, here's what really changes when America's federal government shuts down. Now, even with the shutdown, viewers, airports stay open, but at a cost. The TSA agents and air traffic controllers are considered essential, so they keep working but without pay. That can lead to staffing shortages and delays, especially if workers start calling in sick. Now, next up, those planning international travel should expect delays. That's correct. Passport offices remain open, but reduced staffing can very well slow down processing times. Now, with fewer hands on deck, routine renewals could also take weeks longer. Some parks, meanwhile, shut their gates while others stay open but will be unstaffed. Now, this means that no rangers, no services, and growing concerns over safety, trash, and even vandalism at these iconic national sites. You name it. Federal employees, including active duty military, will not get paid until the shutdown ends or is lifted. Now, their work continues, but their paychecks have stopped. It's financial stress for the families serving the country. Essential food programs, meanwhile, like the SNAP or SNAP and the WIC, could very well be in trouble if the shutdown drags on, like it did in 2018, by the way, when the US was in shutdown for 34 long days. Now, while benefits might continue short-term, funding could dry up very fast, especially for the WIC, which also supports mothers and children. Now, one thing that will not change are America's mails. That's correct. The Postal Service runs independently and will not be affected by this shutdown. Meanwhile, deliveries, stamps and post offices will all stay open. Speaking of weather alerts, well, they will stay. However, all upgrades will be paused during the entire duration of the federal shutdown. FEMA workers will be there, but their funds might run dry. But if the shutdown drags out, it is possible that the Federal Emergency Management Administration of FEMA could very well run out of money for its disaster relief fund. So, viewers, while the Congress fights over funding, real people, real Americans, and millions of them together are actually feeling this shutdown fallout.
Changing America into a shutdown, rejecting bipartisan talks, pushing a partisan bill, and risking America's health care, worst of all.
Well, the Democrats want to shut it down, so when you shut it down, you have to do layoffs. So we'd be laying off a lot of people that are going to be very affected, and the Democrats, they're going to be Democrats.
Trump doesn't care about how this shutdown is going to hurt real, average Americans across the country. He doesn't care about the Republican healthcare crisis. He clearly thinks this is all a game.
As you know, this country, no country can afford to pay for illegal immigration health care for everybody that comes into the country. That's what they're insisting. And obviously, I have an obligation to not accept that. That would affect everybody.
Right, Professor Swaran Singh joins us for more on this. He's the Professor of International Relations at JNU. Thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us on this very important bulletin, sir. Professor, now I'd like to start by asking you the bottom line here. Who really feels the shutdown first and who feels it the hardest?
Obviously, there is a whole spectrum of people who will get impacted. Immediately, of course, there could be a large number of federal employees, but also by extension, all those who depend on federal loans or federal contracts, particularly small businesses which depend on regular cash flows. But in long run, also the whole the system of United States in terms of its global credibility, United States being largest economy on the planet means such disruptions will also impact global stock exchanges. Commodity prices could go up because US is the most important importer of high value commodities. It could also mean impact on American prestige and credibility among friends and so on. And what makes it particularly intriguing is that this time, though there have been several shutdowns or one-day gaps between funding, this time we have been hearing President Trump from the very beginning trying to cut down the size of bureaucracy. And he's very clearly adamant on not really changing or reversing tax cuts or coming back to healthcare subsidies.
Well,
So
I'd
it's a
like to come
policy
in there,
divide.
Professor Singh. You very interestingly, sir, mentioned credibility. I have a question around this. Is this crisis all about budget or is it also about politics? And how long can essential workers go on without being paid?
I was exactly coming to that this is not a simple contestation on budget in terms of numbers. It's a clear policy divide that is making it more difficult to bridge the gap between two sides. Obviously, Democrats are very upset with the fact that Republicans chose to pass it clean in the House, as they are saying, because they could muster the majority there. But in Senate, they need sort of supra majority of 60 out of 100 numbers, and they have only 53, so they depend on Democrats here. And that is where Democrats are now insisting that for each vote they need concessions. And what we are reading in media is that they are asking for concession of healthcare subsidies up to $1 trillion, which may not be easily acceptable to Republicans. So I am assuming that the shutdown is not going to end very soon. It could go up to a week, even worst case fortnight. And that would mean 1% sort of reduction of US GDP in terms of productivity coming down. And that is what makes it really much more serious and complex with global implications. It will impact their visas, embassy operations, international negotiations. We are doing India-United States trade negotiations. It could even go as far as that. So it's a policy divide, and I think the whole very strange and adamant attitude of President Trump very clearly makes it difficult. And it serves his purpose in also cutting down the fat and the bureaucracy, as he keeps saying repeatedly. So not
Right,
just
Professor.
the temporary jobs, non-essential jobs, even permanent and essential jobs are at stake right now.
Now, another question that is, viral and doing the rounds on social media is basically this: do shutdowns actually save government money and public money, or in the long run, does the government end up spending more because of the log jams? We know there be a log jam in passports, as you were mentioning. There be log jam in many other fields in the country. So will the shutdown actually save public money or government money, or in the long term will it cost the country more?
There is no doubt. We remember that the last 2018-19 shutdown meant that about 850,000 employees were furloughed.
That's correct.
So one could really talk about, even the estimates are this time, the estimates are about 750,000 could be furloughed. So one could maybe stretch an argument to say, yes, there is some saving somewhere, but loss is much greater. Even on regular earnings, the revenues, for example, all the national parks, all the national museums, etc., would be closed down, and so many non-essential services will be unavailable to people, which would actually mean loss of money, more loss of revenue for the government. But much indirect cost of the whole rattling of businesses, economies, services credibility, that the kind of credit ratings itself could get impacted of United States if it goes as far as I said, between a week and a fortnight. So there is a short-term, immediate, and long-term cost. So in cost-benefit analysis, the
Absolutely.
advantages would be very limited and cost will be much higher.
Right. Thank you so much for weighing in on this very important development that has in fact taken place. And its ripples will not only be felt across the US, but across the world as at that. Thank you so much once again, Professor Singh, for joining us on this Wednesday edition of India Global. Viewers, shifting focus, there are big changes not only coming in the US, but they're coming in the UK for foreign workers. And Indians are likely to be among groups that will feel it the most. Now, the Labour government in its latest move has in fact doubled the waiting time for permanent residency from 5 years to 10 years. Now, this means more time in limbo for skilled migrants, especially Indians, who, by the way, remember, make up the largest group of workers and students in the UK. And it's not just about the wait here. Applicants will now have to pass new good citizen tests. They'll have to prove that they're fully integrated. And how are they expected to do this? Well, by showing strong English skills, steady financial contributions, and even community service. Can you believe it? British Home Secretary, meanwhile, Shabana Mahmood, says, or rather claims, that the policy is about restoring fairness and public trust. But for tens of thousands of Indian professionals, this means higher costs, more uncertainty, and of course, needless to say, a much longer road to finally settle down in the UK. So will these tougher rules really fix the UK system, or will they just make life even harder for those who are already playing by the rules? Now, to discuss this and to delve in on many other facets, we've got Prashant Ajmera, immigration lawyer, joining us. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday edition of India Global, Mr. Ajmera. My first question to you is simply, is doubling the wait time truly about integration, or is it just political signaling?
Definitely it's a troubling, number one. And number two, the making it the 10 years, does it make the system better? I don't think so. Because there are so many other issues are there which needs to be addressed. Rather than looking at those ones, the skilled workers who are coming from in India and from all over the world, the threshold is put on them about the 10 years wait times, better English test, better community services, what you have contributed, how you have integrated. And these are all very subjective kind of an assessment could be, which can make it difficult for people to do it in any way. I mean, you can never had a open immigration policy unlike Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But with this one coming from a liberal government, definitely it makes a very, very difficult for the skilled workers, and it is going to affect more to the skilled workers coming from in India.
Advocate Ajmera, how might these changes impact the UK's ability to attract global talent, especially from India? We've been seeing similar steps being taken in the US, and that has, in fact, disparaged Indian talent from going to the US. How would these policies impact or change UK's ability to attract global talent, according to you?
It will be very, very difficult for them, definitely, because as of now, to be honest with you, the threshold is quite high. And in that one now, if this thing is coming up, then if I want to stay in a UK, do I need to wait in a 10 years of uncertainty whether I'm going to get a permanent residence or not? So it is going to be difficult for people to, for the UK government to attract the talents, not only from India, from around the world. Unless you are a really highly skilled workers, highly paid in a top Fortune 500 companies, if you are working, then only you're going to make it. So what about the other ones? It is going to be very difficult for people, and also equally it is going to be difficult for the government to attract the skilled workers and professionals from across the world. Definitely, it is going to be difficult.
Of course. Now, on to the million-dollar question here, Advocate Ajmera. What legal or human rights challenges could this policy eventually face going forward? Could a sense or a degree of discrimination be probably also alleged?
Not necessarily. When it comes to the skilled workers, all the 5 English-speaking countries I have seen continuously on an ongoing basis, they change their regulations time to time, and it's their right as a government to change their policy the way in which they think proper. So could it lead to any kind of litigations or something like that? I very much doubt. I don't think that it's going to happen because this is for a skilled worker. If it was affecting the other areas, which is refugees and those kind of workers, means people coming to USA, that to UK, it might have gone to the court and challenging something like that. But nothing is talking about on that one. But it's making it difficult for the skilled worker. So the problem is with the people coming in a boat to UK. To solve that problems, they are hammering and shouting at the skilled workers. To me, obviously, it doesn't make a sense. I mean,
Very
why don't you
important.
take it?
Yes, a very important point. In fact, you raised there. Apologies to cut you off like that. But does this shift signal also the end of UK as a top destination for skilled migrants, as we've been seeing across, through the decades together?
Right, yes, yeah, it is going to be difficult. People will start thinking twice because as it is, as I said that in the beginning of my answers, that as it is, it was a difficult destination. They don't have any open immigration policy. That means you need to find a company to sponsor you. And now it was 5 years, so people thought that they can stay. But now waiting for a 10 years, you cannot change your jobs. If you lose a job, then what is going to happen? You have to look for another job. So it is 10 years of an uncertainty. Nobody wants to stay in that one. So yes, it is going to be difficult for the government, and particularly it is coming from a liberal government is really shocking because I have lived in UK for 6 years, and generally when we see that the rules become stricter, we see it's coming from a Tory government or a conservative government, whereas this one is coming from a liberal government. Generally, they've been regarded as a pro-immigrants or means in favor of the immigrants, but it's coming from this government is really shocking.
Well, thank you so much, Advocate Ajmera, for delving in and helping, in fact, us flesh out the nitty-gritties and the details of this very important stories. We shift our focus now, viewers, to Canada, where Foreign Minister Anita Anand's upcoming visit to New Delhi marks a major attempt to, in fact, reset India-Canada relations. Now, she recently met Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar in New York, who called the talks positive and also welcomed the appointment of new high commissioners. The visit comes as both governments have agreed to keep diplomatic channels open. Now, this comes despite a few sticking points and ongoing court cases. It also comes at the back of Canada's designation of the dreaded Lawrence Bishnoi gang as a terror entity. Meanwhile, Anand says she's coming to discuss the next steps in her words, but the outcome may very well depend heavily on how these talks unfold in New Delhi. And with that, it's time we slip into a short break. Much more lined up on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching the Wednesday edition of India Global, viewers. In a heated protest, in fact, erupted outside the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva as members of the Awami League accused interim Bangladesh leader Mohammad Yunus of illegally taking power and also enabling religious extremism. That's correct. They claim Yunus, once a global peace icon himself, has in fact silenced opposition and cracked down on minorities, especially Hindu and dissenters. Now, placard at the protest, as you see right there on your screen, branded Yunus a killer and a terrorist, demanding his resignation and the cancellation of his Nobel Peace Prize. Speaking to media, Awami League leaders alleged Yunus seized power through violence and is in fact tilting Bangladesh towards Pakistan, straining historic ties with India. Listen in.
Yunus government is, in my view, he is completely illegal. He took state power by terrorist attack, and he is committing illegal things in Bangladesh, and there is a minority and a political opposition are arrested without any complaint. They are in jail without any complaint, and they are killing in the jail.
Well, you heard the Awami League's Switzerland secretary there. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina even addressed the crowd by phone, backing the protesters. Meanwhile, Yunus back home has defended his interim rule repeatedly, saying elections will follow once key reforms are done. However, he's been dilly-dallying on the timeline. Now, the latest timeline, he says, is around February 2026. Meanwhile, he's also denied all accusations of anti-Hindu violence, calling them quote-unquote fake news. However, critics continue to warn that under Yunus's leadership, democracy and rights in Bangladesh may very well be eroding really fast. And for the time being, the political storm around Mohammad Yunus shows no signs of slowing. And with the election still uncertain, the international spotlight is only getting bigger and hotter. Meanwhile, a 6.9 magnitude offshore rocked Philippines, killing at least 69 people with 140 others injured. This, as officials warned, the numbers could very well climb further as rescuers, in fact, access collapsed buildings. The Indian embassy in Manila, meanwhile, has expressed its deepest condolences to the families of those affected by the earthquake in the island nation. Meanwhile, here are some of the most defining visuals from the earthquake. First up, CCTV footage from Cebu City shows residents panicking as they began to feel the ground shaking or the tremors, sending people dashing out into streets. Residents also panicked in the dark as the intense shaking cut off power supply, with videos showing structures collapsing and crowds running in fear at a public market. And a not-so-picturesque ending, by the way, to the Miss Asia Pacific International 2025, as viral visuals again show chaos erupting during the closing gala night of the event as panic-gripped models fell off the runway, which began shaking as the 6.9 magnitude quake hit the country. It sent everyone to seek shelter under tables to protect themselves in a last-ditch effort from the falling debris. Now, one of the contestants, Miss Belgium, also suffered an injury after falling off the runway. And finally, among the many buildings which collapsed, it includes a centuries-old church. The Archidiocesan Shrine of Santa Rosa de Lima in Cebu suffered extensive damage. Visuals on your screens right now show piles of debris outside the sanctuary, with large sections of historic building visibly torn apart. Rubble was also scattered inside the monastery, where properties were destroyed. Built back in, or way back, I should say, in 1886, the shrine is considered the country's first church dedicated to Saint Rosa of Lima. Meanwhile, India has raised strong objections at the Asian Cricket Council meeting on Tuesday and grilled the ACC chief and Pakistan Cricket Board chairman Mohsin Naqvi for his part in the Asia Cup trophy fiasco during the post-match presentation after the Asia Cup final, which India won on Sunday. Team India refused to accept the trophy from Naqvi, and he in return, well, what did he do? He responded by taking it to his custody. That's right. PCC Vice President Rajiv Shukla, meanwhile, who also attended this ACC meeting, asked tough questions of Naqvi and also grilled him for not handling the trophy to the victorious Indian team. Not only this, Shukla also reminded Naqvi that the trophy is the property of the Asian Cricket Council and not Naqvi himself, who just, by the way, viewers, took it along with him to his hotel room. Difficult to believe, but he actually did that. Naqvi took the trophy to his hotel room. The BCCI Vice President Rajiv Shukla also said that the trophy needs to be handed to Team India in a proper manner and that the ACC should look into the matter immediately. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this Wednesday edition of India Global. Take care and have a wonderful day.